very happy to have Mr. Collins joining us this afternoon to present Sailing Towards My Father, The Life and Times of Herman Melville. Mr. Collins is a classically trained actor who has performed in many productions. He currently performs 9 one-man shows and has been met with rave reviews over the decades. And there will be a question and answer period afterwards. Enjoy the show. Thank you.
And I have loved the ocean, loved thee, loved thee. My heart has stopped. I was dreaming of an ocean at war with itself. The battle was brief. The waves fell into darkness. I just turned 72. And so this is death, the undiscovered country. My eyes are clear again. My back, I'm no longer in pain. Lizzie strokes my head while Bessie weeps. Lizzie whispers, he's at peace at last. Her hair once brown that I turned to gray. In the valley of the Typees, naked widows jump up and down to show their grief. Lizzie dons her Boston black. Had I died at sea, they would sew me up, weigh me down, and splash into the blue. Instead, I'm being planted at Woodlawn, next to my sons, Malcolm, who shot himself, Stanwix from tuberculosis. My stone bears vine, quill, and scroll, for I was a writer once, the man who lived with cannibals. A quiet service, witnessed by few, Tom's widow, Alan's daughter, Kate, a widow herself. Fanny did not attend, nor do I blame her. Mackie knew me when I was golden. Fanny knew only my eclipse and my darkness. There are 2 things parents should give their children, said Goethe, roots and wings. I gave mine neither, yet Bessie seemed to like me. Lizzie and her neuralgia, Bessie and her rheumatism. They're like sisters now, monkey roped for life. Down I go into the earth. The worms, not the sharks, shall have me. Lizzie takes down my library. So many books, and I swam through them all. 2 years before the mast, which put me aboard the Acushnet, the Divine William, I fed his Lear to my whale. Rabelais, who told the truth and shamed the devil. Brown, who wondered if Christ ever laughed. Kant, who cried, dare to think. Goethe, remember to live. The Mosses, Aunt Mary's star-crossed gift. They were once my lifeblood. All of them now tombs for words. Of the making of many books, there's no end. Lizzie sits at my desk, sorting through papers. Some are placed in a tin, others dropped in a bucket. She takes out Billy Budd, reads the dedication to Jack Chase, Englishman, wherever that great, places Billy in the tin. She takes out poems dedicated to her and reads Red Clover. How often would I present you with these roses of the meek, and how I'd yearly remind you of my finding a 4-leaf specimen on the 4th day of a certain bridal month, and my widow weeps. To know all is to forgive all, she whispers. Farewell, Elizabeth Knapshaw. Your landlocked heart never sailed with mine. But when you became my mother, I truly loved you, I'll not haunt you. Like Rabelais, I go to seek a great perhaps. Whitman called this island Mannahatta. Mannahatta, where her streets lead you down to wharves to join other men standing where their fathers once stood. They line up like sentinels, these pale creatures, tied to counters, chained to desks, all of them gazing into the blue. Father was an importer, had crossed the ocean several times. He told me of monstrous waves mountain high, of ship masts bending like twigs in a storm, of Liverpool and London. We had furniture made in Europe, paintings too. One was of a whale, full of harpoons, and 3 boats chasing after it as fast as the men can row. Whaling is but a shadow now. The romance of the sea, long departed. Yet men still come here to dream, and thus these wharves shall always be filled. New York sheds many skins, but the customs house remains, that and the rats who rule the wharves. 20 years I inspected cargo for $4 a day. Oh, those corrupt times when greased palms and winking eyes decreed what entered New York Harbor. I was true and kept my post when each political change flushed out those Augean stables. I was number 75, and no one knew their fathers had dreamt of my fade-away under Tropical Isle. We returned here to Albany after Father went bankrupt in '37. All are buried here now save Kate, who survives us, and Tom, who sleeps down in Snug Harbor. Father was a Boston Melville of Scottish descent. I thought him the most perfect of creatures. When he died, I sought him in others. Twice I found but lost him again. Father's death set me on my path at 12. My schooling ended, genteel poverty begun. Think not of the bitterness of old age. A boy can feel all that and more when mildew blights his soul, and the very air of paradise can never cause him to bloom. Mama added an E to deflect our shame. In the valley of the Taipes, she'd be on her haunches, kneading poey-poey well into old age. But Mama was a lady and did not lift a finger. Instead, we lived on her family's charity till I could bear it no more and ran off to sea. Mama raised her children as Calvinists. How cruel to tell a child he's damned from birth and his only salvation is to embrace the Christ. But before I could, I questioned his father. Why? I flung again and again to the heavens, each why a harpoon in God's back. Emerson declared evil as the mumps and measles of the world, a phase to be outgrown. Hawthorne saw evil for what it was and believed in nothing. I fell in between. I wanted to believe, but my soul could never harbor with a God said to be all merciful, but proved time and again he was not. In Liverpool, I passed a cellar where a mother lay with children at her breast, living bones, barely alive. The street hag said she'd made her bed. The policeman said, "This be none of my business." I stole bread, but those creatures were well beyond food. When next I passed, they were dead and rotting, their bread uneaten. I witnessed 4 men being flogged aboard the United States. Their crime, a drunken brawl ashore. One was a boy, a mere boy named Peter, and he sobbed for mercy. The captain nodded and the cat was swung, and Peter screamed, "My God! My God!" But God did not listen. 11 more strokes scarred that boy for life. I had to deny knowledge to make room for faith, says Kant. Gansevoort, my elder, was made in our father's image. He too was beautiful, witty, educated. Mama preferred him over her second son, who was so like her, sturdy, earthbound, the Dutch side, her side of the family. Had Mama smiled on me as she did on Gansevoort, she would have known my need for love was more than matched by the love I had to give. But she gave me sweet Helen, devoted Augusta, lively Kate, saintly Priscilla. I will bless her for that. Alan, my junior, was true head of the family. Oh, I was fond of him, but not of his stuffy legal world. I skewered it in Bartleby. Mama thought highly of Alan and proved it by dying 2 months after he did. Now she sleeps, her favorites at her side. Sail on, Herman Melville. Sail on. My gallant Tom, gone in your prime, who could have known your noble heart was flawed? You worshipped me, your father, brother, and sailed in my footsteps, working up to captain. Mama was proud, but oh, was I prouder. We had our image taken together. We were truly brothers with our matching beards, and when you died, old sailors lined up in farewell to their governor. Sleep snug in Snug Harbor, my gallant Tom. Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, Concord, Massachusetts. I once wrote to him, the hawthorn is a sweet flower. May it grow on every hedge. But no hawthorn grows on this piece of earth. His wife died in London, an ocean lies between them. Perhaps he waited till they could sail together. Whereas this old spermaceti has left his harem to swim alone. I look back, for the sun is rising one last time, one last time, one last time. Ah, she blows, and the men of the Acushnet lower away. Picture yourself for the first time in an open boat so slight, 3 men can walk off with it, some 15 miles from your ship and 100 times as far from the nearest land, giving chase to one of those monsters. Pull! Pull, ye bastards, the boatheader cries, and you tug with might and main at the oars. Pull, I say! Break your lazy backs. The whale is soon ahead of you. Listen to the roar of the waters in his wake, matched by the pounding of your heart. Turn around and snatch a look at him. There he goes, surging through the brine that ripples about his head like the bow of a ship. Stand up and give it to him. The harpooner drops his oar. He snatches his iron. It flies. Then everything's sight and sound as the whale flails about, then plunges madly ahead, taking you on a Nantucket sleigh ride. But this is nothing. You've just harpooned the beast. Now you must kill him. And when at last he turns to fight, he will fight to the death. He staves one boat with the sweep of his flukes. He crunches another to bit, men and all. The third boat pierces his mighty heart, and he spouts red. And when he rolls over, the battle's done. You tie the whale to your boat and slowly, painfully row him back to the ship, followed by 1,000 sharks. The brown skin, the white, the great white, all are coming uninvited to the feast. The whale is chained to the ship. Its blubber is peeled round and round like an orange. Monkey rope men stand on the whale and spear as many sharks as they can. And when the whale has been stripped of its blubber, its headless trunk, bleached white by the sun, is released, and the sharks bear it away, joined by screeching birds swooping down for their share, and that great mass of death floats on and on till all are lost in infinity. And the gore, and the stink, and the smoke when the blubber is rended down, and the barrels of oil in the hold, where the late whale glides on as before, though he'll not rise again, and you wait for the next. There she blows. Stranded in Hawaii, I sign aboard the United States, sailing for home. I'm assigned to Jack Chase, captain of the foretop. Jack is a Briton, tall and well-knit, with a clear, open eye, a fine, broad brow, and a nut-brown beard. No man ever had a better heart or bolder. He's loved by the crew, admired by the officers. Even the captain speaks to Jack with respect. Jack knows the verses of Byron, the romances of Scott. He speaks of Don Juan and Rob Roy, of Macbeth and Ulysses. I think him the most perfect of creatures. We become fast friends. I'm soon called Jack's pet. But whoever cannot love that man is a knave to me. When we reach Boston, I kiss that noble hand in farewell. Wherever you may be, Jack, take my best love with you, and may God bless you wherever you go. I come home from the sea, bearded and burnt, a whale ship, my Harvard, my Yale. Gansevoort prig that he is, keeps me from mama till I'm shaved and presentable again. But oh, am I different inside? I'm the man who lived with cannibals, how I round my family's eyes with tales from the valley of the Types. Tom is enchanted and begs me to write them down. I will, I shall. 6 months at sea. Yes, dear reader, as I live, 6 months out of sight of land, cruising after the sperm whale under the scorching sun of the line, tossed about on the billows of the wide rolling Pacific, the sky above, the sea around, nothing else. It's a cruel life, the sea. You feel a second flood has come, and you ride an ark of men and rats upon it. Think no more of home. These outcast bastards and illiterates are your family now, and the merciless sun makes the pitch bubble and ooze from the deck, and cape winds freeze you down to your marrow, and the maggots multiply in the food, and the roaches swarm everywhere else. And below decks becomes a stinking Sodom, where I search for a friend, but find none. And yet there are moments when each dawn comes out of Genesis, and let there be light upon these waters. Or when you pick out bright Centaurus, never to be seen in northern skies, when flying fish leap up into the air, then fall back like a shower of silver, or being up in the mast with the ship but a plank below, one with the gulls, the clouds, the very sun, most of all the ocean with her shades and shadows, lost dreams and lost men, all wrapped in vast, unending silence. And for the first time, I saw the hand, if not the face of God. Oh, this wheel of fortune, which drags us down in order to lift us up. Harper's rejects Typee, but a Dr. Nichols has read my manuscript and convinces my brother Gansevoort it might get published in England. Gansevoort has been appointed the post of American Secretary, and he takes Taipei off to London with him. He writes, John Murray shall publish my book. Well, I blink stupidly at his letter, and Irving, father of Rip, has read the proofs and recommends it to Wiley and Putnam. Thus Taipei shall be published both here and abroad. Chief Justice Lemuel Shaw was father's dearest friend. He can be fierce on the bench, but has a tender heart in private. When father died, Judge Shaw became our benefactor. I shall dedicate Taipei to him. Like Byron, I wake up to find myself famous. Taipei is the talk of London, followed by the American edition. Mama is of two minds. The scandal of my jumping ship to live with cannibals versus the royalties which start to arrive. She leans towards the latter. I write to Gansevoort. Receive no reply. He's died. Insane. In London. Truly his father's son. I go down to New York for his remains, and I meet Everett Dykink of Wiley and Putnam, a publisher's son. Books were his mother's milk. Dykink, diving duck. I love all men who dive. Everett takes me under his arm. He has read the proofs to Taipei and declares I must join the revolution for an American literature, free from English copyright. Young America, his battle cry. I start writing a sequel instead, but with celebrity. Come doubters, Taipei is but mere fancy. Its author has dreamed his own Robinson Crusoe. But my chummy Green turns up to declare it's all true, for he was Toby, who had also jumped ship. But the doubters are still not satisfied. Taipei must be a hoax. This sailor writes more like a gentleman than anything else. True, I am a gentleman's son. But at sea, I showed as brown a chest and as hard a hand as any tar yet could tell my tale with clarity and not a little style. Taipei is selling on both sides of the Atlantic, which is what matters most. And you owe it all to your brother, says Mama. I am not, never was, nor ever shall be her precious Gansevoort. But when will she realize her precious Gansevoort was never me? Well, Everett leaves Wiley and Putnam to start a new weekly, The Literary World. A wily move indeed. He coaxes, he pleads with me for Omu's first chapters, and I politely decline. Mother England is about to birth it. But young America, he says. Omu quickly goes into a second and a third edition, but brings the missionaries down on my head. I wrote what I saw in Tahiti. How the white man did more damage than good to those he calls heathens. He's brought disease and rats and mosquitoes with his God. He's covered their bodies and made them ashamed. He's taken their lands and made them no better than slaves. I was the snake in the valley of the Taipei. I would have corrupted by teaching its people to read and write, to think and quarrel and doubt. But I escaped before infecting them. May Cory, this very moment, be napping beneath a palm tree, safe from us white devils. Whenever in Boston, I call on Judge Shaw and his library, but I soon come to call on his daughter Elizabeth. She knows why suitors call on the judge's only daughter. But she's chosen to wait rather than to rush into marriage. Well, we talk of this and that. Do you know, Helen shook the hand of Mr. Dickens and vowed never to wash hers again. No. Have you witnessed the practice by which the Typees are famous? No, but I did see some bones. I see. She does. The Daily Tribune reports, Mr. Herman Typee Melville has been united in lawful wedlock to a young lady of Boston. The fair forsaken Fayaway will doubtless be suing for breach of promise. The fair forsaken Fayaway will have forgotten her Tomo by now, as she needs Poe for her two husbands. Oh, I feel I'm below decks again, sharing this box with Lizzie, Alan, Sophia, Mama, Helen, Gus, Kate, Priscilla. Alan goes off to his downtown office. Tom has gone to sea. I go upstairs to earn my living. Lizzie blends so with my sisters she starts to feel neglected. I give her Marty to transcribe, but she can't keep up. I call on Gus, who is swift of pen, and Lizzie goes back to dusting under Mama's baleful eyes. Well, we dress for lunch, we dress for dinner, we dress to make calls, we dress to receive. The land begins to scorch my feet. I escape to Evet's and borrow Brown, Kant, Rabelais, Cervantes, Goethe, Dante, and my brain begins to unfold with Mardi. Yilla was a maiden from Aurelia, the island of delights. To this isle by some mystical power, she had been spirited from Amma, the land of her nativity, but hardly had the waters of Aurelia washed white her olive skin and tinged her hair with gold when she was snared in the tendrils of a vine, transformed into one of its blossoms, her soul folded up in its petals. Marty's reception baffles me. Typee was considered mere fiction. When I chose to fictionalize with Mardi, I'm labeled no writer at all. Everett praises it in his globe, but the damage is done. The royalties shall trickle, not flow for Mardi. However, Everett says there are still arrows in my quiver and that I still need to write. I banish Brown, that crackpot angel, and I begin a nursery tale about a fatherless lad bound for Liverpool. So vivid now was the impression of his having been here that I felt like running on and overtaking him around the town hall adjoining. But I soon checked myself when realizing he'd gone whither no sun's search could find him on this earth. And I had much ado to keep from tears. Where is the foundling's father hidden? My son, I know not how much he weighs, but it takes 3 nurses to dress him, and he's as lusty as a Caesar. I shall call him Barbarossa, or Ferdinand, or Bonaparte. Malcolm, says Gus. Malcolm it is. His first words were, "Where's that old man?" "I'm here, Mackie. I'll always be here." Dolt and ass that I am, but until a few weeks ago, I had not read the Divine William. He's full of sermons on the Mount, but gentle. Aye, gentle as Jesus. And through the mouths of his Hamlet and Lear, he speaks what we know to be true, though it be madness to even hint of it. There's nothing, either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. There's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Oh, this wheel of fortune, which lifts us up in order to drag us down. Again, I'm forced to write about the sea. Taipei and Umu were my wanderings. Redburn my merchant vessel, White Jacket my man of war. That leaves the catching and killing of whales. Not fit company for ladies to read in their beds. My heart's not in it. Well, blubber is blubber. You can get oil out of it, but the poetry will run as hard as sap from a frozen maple. Oh, New York City is positively an oven in summer. We join Aunt Mary in Pittsfield. Here, she says, giving me a book, Mosses from an Old Manse. A patch of moss is pasted inside. From Salem, she says. An outing has been planned up Monument Mountain. Everett has been coaxed from Manhattan. Dr. Holmes is here summering. From Boston comes the plumper half of Tickner and Fields. A tall, balding Apollo approaches, and a blue wave rolls over me. Will this be Nathaniel Hawthorne? Man of the mosses. I passed his farmhouse several times, but never knew he lived there. Talking to him is like wooing a shy maiden, but the divine magnet is upon him, and my metal responds. He's been called a pleasant writer. Thus I had stayed away from his books, but when I read his mosses, I knew him. Beneath his humor, his sunshine, lies a blackness, the same blackness from which Shakespeare spun his tales. But the divine William wrote with the muzzle on his soul. His own Elizabethans put it there. He could only speak his truth through his madmen. But no madmen for Hawthorne, no. He writes with the freedom that comes only from knowing his heart. Totally unfettered. I know the course, the path his heart has taken. No man can soar to such heights without plunging first to the bottom. Any fish can swim near the surface, but it takes a great whale to go down 5 miles or more. And if he can't find the bottom, no amount of lead in the world can fashion the plummet that will. I think him the most lovely of creatures. To he who built this farmhouse, could you have known after clearing this land, this vista would be yours? Behold Greylock, with all his hills about him, like Charlemagne among his peers. But there's no piazza, and one must be had. The house is wide, my fortune narrow. On what side should I build? To the east the hills. Come December, the dawns drape those highlands with red-barred plaids and tartans, but to the north is Charlemagne, to the south apple orchards, the Maytime orchards all in white, their leaves and apples come October, but to the north is Charlemagne, to the west a rising pasture leading up to the maples, how the greens streak through the browns and grays when spring awakens, but to the north is Charlemagne. I turn over the soil, and I find arrowheads from a vanished tribe. I christen this my home, Arrowhead. To the north is Charlemagne. 6 miles away is Hawthorne. And the sun is at its zenith. I must start anew. I'll keep my bumpkin, but call him Ishmael. Ishmael, born to wander. Bulkington stood full 6 feet in height with noble shoulders and a chest like a coffer dam. Adjure, Bulkington, you'll not be the hero after all. Adjure for now. My whaler must become a democracy. Young America. The Acushnet had only white men, but come aboard the Pequod, you men of red and yellow, brown and black. And God created great whales, the mighty whales which swim in a sea of water and have a sea of oil swimming in them. Mocha Dick was an old bull whale of massive size and strength. From age or freak of nature, he was white as wool. On Tower Hill in London, a crippled beggar holds a painted board showing how he lost his leg. There are 3 whales and 3 boats, and his boat is being crunched by one of the whales. In the lower jaw are 42 teeth of formidable size, but conical in shape. Can you draw out Leviathan with a fish hook? Can you fill his skin with harpoons, or his head with fishing spears? I will, I shall. What tune is it ye pull to, men? A dead whale or a stove boat? And Ahab, son of Omri, did evil in the face of the Lord, above all that came before him. Autumn in the Berkshires. I find myself jaquizing in the woods. The air is so ripe and ruddy. 'Tis must be harvest time with the angels. How the reds of the maple contrast with the green of the pines, yet harmonize. Whenever I find myself growing grim about the mouth, whenever it is a drizzly, damp November in my soul, then I account it high time to get to sea as soon as I can. No sooner is ground broken than the neighbors laugh. A piazza facing north. True, the winter winds will pummel me, but I'll walk my piazza as if on deck sailing round Cape Horn, and when August comes and I'm in the shade, I'll pity those in the sun. But man, proud man, his glassy essence, like an angry ape, plays such fantastic tricks on high heaven as make the angels weep. Talk not to me of blasphemy, man. I'd strike the sun if it insulted me. Oh, I have a sort of sea feeling now. The ground is covered with snow. In the mornings I look out my window as I would out of the porthole of a ship in the Atlantic. My room seems a ship's cabin. At nights when I awake and I hear the wind shrieking, I almost fancy there's too much sail on the house. I'd better get on the roof and rig in the chimney. The whale struck the Essex to windward directly under the cathead and stove in her bows. She passed under the ship again, went off to leeward, and we saw no more of her. Oh, I need 50 fast-riding youths, for Gus now runs the household. Helen can't keep up with me. Lizzie's no housekeeper, and Mama lets her know it. Nor is she much of a wife, always off to Boston to visit her father. Maids are made when they are maids, but the sky changes when they are wives. Aye, sweet William, that they do. The Acushnet was wrecked off St. Lawrence in August. The crew rescued. The ship, a total loss. 1,300 barrels in her hold. Less than 300 saved, less than 300. That side blow through Mrs. Hawthorne will not do. I am not to be charmed out of my promised pleasure by any of that lady's Cyrenisms. You, sir, I hold accountable. The visit in all its original integrity must be made. Come, no nonsense. If you don't, I will send constables after you. Hawthorne presents me with his gables. It surpasses his other work. But something is lacking in the man himself. Speak, thou vast and venerable head. Of all divers thou hast dived the deepest. That head upon which the upper sun now gleams has moved amid this world's foundations, where unrecorded names and navies rust and untold hopes and anchors rot, where in her murderous hold the earth is ballasted with bones of millions of the drowned. O head, thou hast seen enough to split the planets and make an infidel of Abraham, and not one syllable is thine. I rushed down to New York to slave on the book while the first chapters are being pushed through the press. It's the only way I can finish now. I'm so far behind schedule. Now the Lord hath prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah. I hear flattering things about the Gables. A second edition is announced. His portrait by Thompson is on display. He is on the ascendant. What reputation I have is horrible. To go down to posterity as the man who lived with cannibals, what have I done? Had I written my whaling book as planned, I'd be finished by now. Instead, this. I come home to recline on the grass and finish the book, reclining upon it. If ever, my dear Hawthorne, in the eternal times that are to come, you and I shall sit down together in paradise in some little shady corner by ourselves. And if we shall by any means be able to smuggle a basket of champagne there and strike our glasses and heads together till both shall musically ring in concert, then, oh my dear fellow mortal, how shall we pleasantly discourse upon all things manifold, which now so distress us, when all the earth shall be but a reminiscence. Yea, its final dissolution and antiquity. Yes, let us look forward to such things. Stand close to me, Starbuck. Let me look into a human eye. It is better than to gaze into sea or sky, better than to gaze upon God. One eye shut, one eye blinking. Roll on, thou dark and deep blue ocean. 10,000 blubber hunters sweep over thee in vain. Lightning flashes through my skull, my eyeballs ache. My whole beaten brain seems as beheaded and rolling on some stunning ground. The throat is capacious enough to give passage to the body of a man, and I throw Lear down its throat and leap in after him. Blow, winds, and crack your cheeks. Rage, blow, you cataracts and hurricanos. Spout to you have drenched our steeples, drowned the cocks, you sulphurous and thought-executing fires. Vaunt couriers to oak-cleaving thunderbolts, singe my white head, and thou, all shaking thunder, strike flat the thick rotundity of the world. Toward thee I roll, thou all-destroying but unconquering whale. To the last I grapple with thee, from hell's heart I stab at thee. Sink all coffins and all hearses to one common pool, and since neither can be mine, let me tow to pieces, while still chasing thee, thou damned whale. Thus I give up the spear. And I alone am escaped to tell thee. I've written a wicked book, yet feel spotless as the lamb. I'm 31 years old. In token of my admiration for his genius, this book is inscribed to Nathaniel Hawthorne. Hawthorne has moved back to Concord away from my tentacles. He writes to me about the whale. He admires portions but cares not a penny for the book. His wife understands what I've written, but she also understands him. I promise her my next book shall be a rural bowl of milk, but damning reviews of the whale curdle me. This was to be my masterpiece, not my greatest failure. Now I'll never pay the judge back for Arrowhead. Pierre becomes my revenge, starting with my father. There were rumors after his death. 2 women visiting Uncle Thomas. The younger, my half-sister, born out of wedlock. I never met her. My uncle paid them off, yet she still haunts me. and my perfect father. This too mortal flesh which melted, resolved itself into a dew, and left us penniless. Pierre learns of his half-sister. He burns his father's portrait, and he passes her off as his wife. If the whale was my Lear, Pierre shall be my Hamlet. I plunge even deeper than before, burrowing through the ocean floor, down to the fiery kingdom. My study is like ice, my fingers are blue. One eye is shut while I blink with the other. One candle alone burns at my side, one, for the blood of men is mixed in with the sperm. When I sleep, I dream of black oceans. The judge's daughter has Holmes pay a call. I know why the little doctor has been summoned. Am I going mad? Like my father and my brother. Oh, but Herman be a clever one. He swims up to the surface to smile and be a villain. We talk of books, Holmes and I. He declares I'm not mad, merely tired. Holmes is right and wrong. The sharks are few, but have their say. French and German decadence. Ever downright hates Pierre, rupturing our friendship. Young America indeed. I write stories so my family can butter their bread. I turn my inner disgust outward with the confidence man, where the devil walks among the fools of the earth. I'm so repulsed by my vision, I send it to Harper's unfinished. It fails. Everything I write fails now. The judge suggests I go abroad for my health. In other words, for everyone's sanity. That good old man will pay for my trip, though he puts me further in his debt. I'll go to the Holy Land to seek him. But stop first in Liverpool to find the other him. Hawthorne and I, we sit among the dunes. Our cigar's an excuse for silence. I talk about God. Sooner or later, I will talk about God. I see pity in Hawthorne's eyes. He too must think me mad. I understand him now. He wants to be left alone. Not just by me, but by everybody. He lives at the bottom of the deepest, darkest well, content with his circle of blue above him. Had he not left Berkshire, I would have drowned in that well. But I had to see him one last time. May I find answers in the Holy Land. For my metal turns to no magnet anywhere. Judea is made of stone. Stones are all about you, stony mountains and stony plains, stony fields, stony walls, stony hearts, stony eyes. Jerusalem has the cold gray eye of a cold old man. The Holy Sepulchre reeks of a charnel house. Turkish policemen smoke outside. I squeeze past the pilgrim where the angel sat into the blazing tomb. I look down upon a glittering slab. Then I file out, disappointed, past the smoking Turk. I go away unanswered, nor do I bother to question. For I know now the voice of God is silence, 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 silence. I've taken to writing poetry. I see Mama's look. Poems don't sell. The judge takes Arrowhead as payment for his loans, puts the deed in his daughter's name. He means well, but I'm reduced to guest in his daughter's house. My back begins to bother me. Rheumatism. Bessie suffers from allergies. Fanny shuns me. Mackie talks back to his mother. Why couldn't I have beautiful, happy children? War is whispered or shouted in the streets. Lincoln is elected. South Carolina secedes with more to follow. Sumter is attacked. The nation is asunder. War is declared. Oh, the wild huzzahs. Union flags flutter on Berkshire roofs. Militias drill on the greens. And then they march away to cheering crowds. And the young were all elation, hearing Sumter's cannon roar. And they thought how tame the nation in the age that went before. But the elders with foreboding mourned the days forever o'er, and recalled the forest proverb the Iroquois old saw, grief to every graybeard when young Indians lead the war. The bulletin board becomes the town's focus. People push to read the dispatches. Oh, the cheers for those early victories, but with the snow come casualties. And when winter has turned to spring, people have had enough. They don't want to think of skulls lined up like pine cones, or of moldy coats filled with bones. The elms that wave on Malvern Hill, in prime of morn and May, recall ye how McClellan's men here stood at bay. Does the elmwood recall the haggard beards of blood? Ah, the sod where thousands meet. Does Malvern wood bethink itself and muse and brood? We elms of Malvern Hill remember everything, but sap the twig will fill, wag the world how it will. Leaves must be green in spring. We've made a trade, my brother Alan and I. Arrowhead for Manhattan. The wife hates Pittsfield winters. I miss Manhattan's energy. What have I to do with Berkshire? Oh, Hawthorne. Well, I've been away too long. I don't recognize her. My Manhattan was still Dutch at heart, concentrated down at the tip. The streets were interlaced fingers with names. Now she pushes north with numbers. I was born on Pearl. I shall dwell on East 26th. Everett and the bookshops remain, but the rest has become war's workshop. Manhattan grunts out rifles, Brooklyn hammers out ships, uniformed men crowd the streets, storefronts become recruiting centers, cannons grow on the sidewalks. The streets leading down to the wharves end in charred remains from the draft riots. The oceans of the world have stopped. Hawthorne has died in his sleep on a trip with his friend Pierce. I should have kept his letters. They might comfort me now, but I burned them back at Arrowhead. I take down a copy of his Mosses, and I read a passage from the Celestial Railroad. There was one strange thing that troubled me amid the occupations or amusements of the fair. Nothing was more common than for a person suddenly to vanish like a bubble and be never more seen of his fellows. And so accustomed were the latter to this, that they went on with their business as if nothing had happened. But it was otherwise with me. Nothing can be finer than that. My battle piece is another failure. Nobody wants war poetry now. Lincoln is dead. The flags are taken down. The cannons wheeled away. The elms of Malvern Hill shall remember, but people want to forget. I become number 75 for $4 a day. It was not a suicide. Mackey was cleaning his pistol. I had locked him out, coming home drunk night after night. He wanted to go to sea. I said, no, the sea's not the answer. It's never the answer. He joined the militia instead, strutting in his uniform, showing off his pistol, out drinking night after night. The wife sat up for him. He promised to reform. He locked himself in his room. I broke down the door and I found him. Pistol in hand. Bullet in brain. It was not a suicide. He was cleaning his pistol. He was cleaning his pistol. Oh, God. He was cleaning his pistol. His first words were, "Where'd that old man?" I don't know, Mackey. He sailed away long, long ago in the valley of the Typees. In the valley of the Typees. My brain is ablaze writing Chlorel. I stumbled through my own holy land, this same dull land which breeds but blues and melancholy. I'm a whirlpool of ink and whiskey, birthing a monster longer than Milton, longer than Homer, dragging Fanny out of her bed to proof the pages. Earn your keep, girl! I'm a voice in the wilderness with no echo, fit company for scorpions and snakes. Mine eyes fixed on a flinty stone which lay there at my feet, then thought would wander. Soon the stone I caught convulsed it in my hand till blood oozed from these nails. I was alone. Alone, no, not long alone. A spirit entered me. 'Twas he, the tempter. He mocked. Why strife? Dost hunger for the bread of life? Thou lackest faith. Faith would be fed. True faith could turn that stone to bread. That stone thou holdest. Hoppus publishes Chlorel at Uncle Peter's expense. The sharks are few, but have their say. Queequeg no care what God made him shark, but the God what made him shark must be one damn engine. Go mad. I cannot. I maintain the perilous outpost of the sane. I read in the Academy the poet Buchanan has sought me out. He's found Whitman, but not this Triton who lives in New York. When Lizzie came into her inheritance, this Triton retired from the customs house and from life itself. My appetite is good. though my back is not. I still go for walks, though not as far. And I still buy books. I still write, but publish privately, and I'm content to be forgotten. I take down Everett's Cyclopedia, published ages ago. I'm represented by Redburn. Everett cared not for the whale. His battle cry, Young America. And the battle has been won. We have a new literature with its own culture, but I care not for today's writers. My era wrote of the sea, of the forest of the New World, but after the war we were no longer new, no longer young. Realism, not romance, today's battle cry. Enough! I've had my day. But who in turn will replace them? I rent a pew in All Souls Church. This be Father's faith, more compassionate than Mama's. Reverend Williams encourages me to seek answers, though I may not find them, that the mysteries of God may remain just that, mysteries. I may be a mystery to God myself. This clay who questions yet clings to him. Over half a lifetime ago, I gave these words to my father Mapple. The ribs and terrors in the whale arched over me a dismal gloom, while all God's sunlit waves rolled by and left me deepening down to doom. In black distress I called my God, when I could scarce believe him mine. He bowed his ear to my complaint, no more the whale did me confine. My song forever shall record that terrible, that joyful hour. I give the glory to my God. His all the mercy and the power. To which I too can now say, Amen. To Jack Chase, Englishman, wherever that great heart may now be, here on earth or harbored in paradise. You are done, Billy Budd. May you live to be published. Prospero breaks his staff. I lay down my pen. I'm sleepy, and the oozy weeds about me twist. I was dreaming of an ocean at war with itself. I'm a beardless boy again. A ship of glass sails toward me. Father brought it home from Europe. It is kept under glass in our parlor. A well-knit man with a nut-brown beard beckons, for the sun is setting one last time. We sail past a whale full of harpoons, and 3 boats chasing after it as fast as the men can row. Recite your Byron, says the captain, and I obey. And I have loved the ocean, and my joy of youthful sports was on thy breast to be born, like thy bubbles on wood. As we near land, the captain smiles, and becomes my perfect father, who takes me up, for I've dwindled down to infancy, and he gives me to my mother, who welcomes me back inside her, where I safely sleep as whales and walruses rush about. And as I dissolve, there are woman sounds. He's at peace at last. Thank you very much. I would be remiss at this point if I did not mention my director and writer, Carl Rossi. He also wrote a Whistler show that I performed. He didn't write the Whistler show for me, he wrote it for someone else that never performed it. But he did write this show specifically for me. And I think he put together a pretty good script. It's kind of funny because right up until about a month before we were scheduled to do the first performance last June, he kept changing things. And I said, Carl, you can't do this to me. I'm memorizing it. I've got the script memorized now. I'm working on it. You can't. He said, no, you got to make this one last change. I said, no, I can't. I said, it's perfect right now. You can't do it. So we had a bit of a falling out. And he basically said, see you later. And I was alone myself the last month of rehearsal, and I did rehearsals by myself. I just went to Newbury Court and Concord, and I ran the show. I did show the script to quite a few friends of mine. One is an English professor. Her name is Anne. She teaches at Gordon College, and she said, Stephen, the Moby Dick bead, she said, I kind of get what he's getting at, but I don't know. It's awfully esoteric to me, and unless somebody's a literature major, I don't think they're going to get all those Shakespeare references and Bible references. And so I said something to Carl, and he got so insulted. He said, what do you want me to do, dumb it down? And he said, the people that get the Shakespeare references and the Bible references will get them, and the people that don't won't. So anyway, he calls them beads, and the show has 12 different little beads. And of course, my favorite bead is the Moby Dick bead. And he wanted to show what a frenzy he was in. There's a writer named Kay Redfield Jameson. Anybody know her work? The Unquiet Mind. She's an expert on bipolar disorder. She believes that Melville was bipolar. We don't know, we don't know definitively, but it makes sense to me that he was in such a white heat when he was writing the book. So, anyway, I've got copies of the script, which are published by Harvard Bookstore. Sometimes people like to have a souvenir. I'd be happy to sign it, autograph it for you. If anybody knows a teacher, a professor, or if you are in charge of a men's group or a women's group or a spiritual group or whatever, and you think you might like to have this show or my Whitman show, please be in touch with me. And with that, I'll take questions if anybody wants to ask one. Yes, ma'am.
Do you know when Melville's books
Became well known?
well known?
Well, it's kind of the same thing that happened to Melville as what happened to Whitman. They both were born, by the way, and they both were born and died in the same year. This year, 2019, is the 200th birthday of both of them. And they both kind of disappeared. And the thing with Melville is that the Billy Budd was discovered in the 1920s. It was in a bread tin up at Arrowhead. And one of his relatives, like a great-grandniece or something, she found it. And that was published. And it got rave reviews. And at that point in time, graduate students started doing dissertations on Melville. And he really became famous again. It makes sense to me. The Roaring Twenties is when people started really doing Melville scholarship again. But he was, the only, Tai P sold well, so did Omu. Marty sold pretty well. But after that, You know, Moby Dick was a commercial failure. Moby Dick was a major commercial failure, as was Pierre, as was The Confidence Man. He died broke. He worked for $4 a day. But then, I mean, I shouldn't say he died broke, because Lizzie did come into her inheritance. But he didn't make a whole lot of money on his own in his lifetime. Yes, sir.
What was the reference to 75?
Oh, he had a badge, number 75.
For what?
He worked for the customs house,
Ah,
and he was number 75. They had to wear a badge and a hat. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So how does a guy who quit school at age 12 have to read Moby Dick? There's so many references, historical, literary.
How does Shakespeare? Shakespeare about the same age. He went to the King's School. Shakespeare went to school till age 14. And then that was the end of his schooling. If you believe that the man from Stratford wrote the play, if you're an Oxfordian, we can agree to disagree. But I mean, Melville is a classic autodidact. You know, he just taught himself. I teach a course on Thomas Hardy's poetry. Hardy would wake up starting at age 11. He had the discipline to wake up and study Latin and Greek for an hour and a half. Imagine an 11-year-old getting up on his own to study Latin and Greek at age 11 and a half. All right, thanks so much. Once again, I have copies of the script if anyone's interested.